Well, the Christian worldview. Christians believe, firstly, that God exists and that He is the creator of all that is, that He sustains as well as creates the universe. And aspects of His character are reflected in what He has created. But God and the creation are not one. They are not the same. God transcends the created order. God and the universe are not the same. They are not part of each other, as in pagan or Eastern thought. God is personal and infinite. He can be known by us, and we are known by Him. He is, if you like, relational, not just some kind of impersonal force. And so this makes Christianity very distinct from the Eastern family of faiths and from paganism and New Age ideas. The second main feature is that creation has order and purpose. God sustains the creation by certain physical laws. It has reliability and rationality. And we are also intimately bound up with its purposes. We're not just the accidents of chance. And it's interesting that the scientific endeavour, which has been so successful in Western culture, derives from this view of the world, not, for example, from the Eastern view of reality. Third key idea, that humanity, you and I, were created by God in His image, which means that, like God, we are personal, relational beings. We relate to one another. We desire to love and be loved. Like God, also, we can think, feel, reason and communicate. Like God, we have a will. We can decide and choose. Therefore, we're responsible and accountable. We are moral beings. We can understand the difference between right and wrong. And like God, we're also creative. And we've been given responsibilities by God in the created order, as well as opportunities. Opportunities for creativity and development. Medical science, for example, is a very good illustration of the tremendous creativity that God has given us. We are the stewards of the creation, to unfold it, but also to care for it. And so the Christian faith is a strong foundation for sustainable development and environmental responsibility. Now, for these reasons, Christians believe every individual is precious. Every individual person is of equal value, and all human life is sacred because we are made in the image of God. However, we are unlike God in some ways, in that we are limited and finite. God is infinite, and we do not have absolute knowledge or absolute power. Fourth key idea of the Christian worldview is that human life and history is not circular. It's not cyclical. We are not caught in an endless cycle of repetition and reincarnation. The biblical worldview is a linear view, and it's purposeful, and it's moving towards God's ultimate purpose. Once again, a fundamental difference between the biblical family of faiths and the other faiths. Fifth key feature, God is not silent. He's not remote. As I said before, He is relational. He communicates with us. He reveals Himself to us. And we are capable of understanding and responding. He reveals Himself in a variety of ways, through the created order, through nature, through our human nature. For example, our longings. All of us recognise those experiences where we have a sense of something being right or something being wrong. We have a longing for justice in a certain situation. Or we experience beauty and we respond to it, a beautiful piece of music, a beautiful piece of artwork, and something in us responds to it. Or the longing for love and acceptance, the longing for purity and innocence. All these longings, which all of us have in ourselves, point us back to the source of complete justice, complete beauty, complete love, the origin of purity. That is, they point us back to God Himself. So God reveals Himself to us in our longings. But preeminently, God reveals Himself to us through Jesus Christ. Listen to these words from the New Testament. They come from Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. Christ is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. And the word that's translated image there, in our English translation, comes from the Greek word icon. Now, you're familiar with an icon on your computer screen, but of course originally what it meant was simply a portrait, a picture of someone. Jesus is the icon, the image of the invisible God. Do you want to know what God is like? You want to get God into perspective, into focus, you look at the person of Jesus Christ. That's what the New Testament is saying. By Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. And He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything He might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Him, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through His blood shed on the cross. That is an extraordinary statement to make about someone. But that is the New Testament assertion about the person of Christ, God's Son. Now, God's words and actions and His particular communications to us culminate in this revelation of Jesus. And they are recorded in the Bible, in the Old and New Testaments. And God continues to speak to us through all of these avenues. Now, there's an important point to be clear about here. The Judeo-Christian understanding of religious knowledge and religious experience is not that we discover God within ourselves, but that God reveals Himself to us and we respond. It's a very, very different way of viewing religious knowledge. God has taken the initiative to connect with us, and He has done that primarily in the person of Jesus. Here's another quotation from the New Testament, from Hebrews chapter 1. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son, whom He appointed heir of all things, and through whom He made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of His being,